Lee, a lot of people are extremely interested in hearing your take on this latest development in the incredibly destructive war that's been going on between Ukraine and Russia. We're supposed to be joined by Mark Dougan, but I think there might have been some confusion on the time zone. Hopefully, he'll be with us in time for the sponsor-exclusive segment. I want to make sure people know they can see that on patreon.com/Stranahan, and that's an excellent way to support Lee, keep the independent journalism going. If you're missing High Dive, you can watch Lee on X. It's definitely important for people to follow Lee on X. He's been doing some great daily AI artwork on there. Lee, how are you tonight?
Doing great, Jason. And let's get straight to conspiracy today, shall we?
Sure.
Okay. So, ready now. By the way, you're going to say holy shit in about 5 seconds. I mean,
I don't doubt it.
10, I'll be reasonable. 15.
Okay.
You're going to say holy shit, but no one's going to get it. Most people are not going to get why you're saying holy shit. So after you say holy shit, we're going to go through all the reasons this is important. And why it's not
the holy shit.
Ready?
Yes.
What was the date of this terror attack, Jason Goodman?
Well, it was March 22nd. Ooh, it was the anniversary of the Ukraine war.
No. What month? What month?
3/22. Skull and Bones.
Say it again.
3/22. Skull and Bones.
Say it again. Right. Yeah, right. Exactly. 3/22. The sign for Skull and Bones. And also, by the way, you know that if we look up, just go to search engine and look up Senate Resolution SenRes 322 in 2005. Type that in, and you'll see that there's a bill. There's a statement in favor of Mikhail Khodorkovsky. See that?
Yes, and it's sponsored by Senator Joe Biden.
And so it was. Don't give away the ending. So yeah. So
Sorry.
Khodorkovsky, Rothschild's sponsored Russian oligarch who hates Putin. He's Putin's major oligarch enemy in Russia because Putin put him in prison for reasons that were valid, by the way.
Yeah.
But Khodorkovsky has vengeance against Putin. So this bill in Senate resolution in favor of Khodorkovsky had one sponsor, and you named him, Joe Biden, and two co-sponsors, a Democrat and a Republican. Now, who are they? The two co-sponsors, only two. It's not like 50 people co-sponsored it. Two people did. One Democrat and one Republican in 2005.
Where does it tell you that?
I don't know what site you're looking at.
Oh, so. Here it is. Here it is. It's McCain and Obama. Damn.
Say it, Jason.
Holy shit.
So Senate Resolution 322 was introduced by Biden and co-sponsored by McCain and Obama in 2005. Now, Obama was just in the Senate at that point. So, Jason, what I think you're looking at here is Obama's ticket to the ball. This is what I mean.
Wow. Wow. You're right.
Biden's introducing his bill about Khodorkovsky and says this new guy who says he's coming up, Obama, he seems like a comer. He seems like he's going to be, when he spoke at the DNC the year before that, it was obvious that he was a good speaker and could be very powerful as a politician. So they got him in, and he was recruited by McCain, maybe by Biden. He'd already recruited McCain. And so think about this, Jason. Both presidential candidates, right? Both presidential candidates in 2008 supported Khodorkovsky.
You said balloons go by.
Yeah, probably for Khodorkovsky. But think about that, Jason. Both presidential candidates. And that's a lot like what they say about Skull and Bones. 322 is the way people in Skull and Bones, the Yale Secret Society, sign their letters, yours in 322. And no one's sure exactly what it means. There are numerous theories But the point is, it's known to be their sign, right? Now, lest you say I'm a conspiracy theorist, go ahead.
I don't think you're a conspiracy theorist. I think this is all correct.
Okay, but just humor me.
You're a conspiracy theorist.
Okay, so are you saying that perhaps because you're saying, well, surely a country would not use numbers like this to taunt someone, right?
No, I think they would and do all the time.
Well, I think there's an example in Ukraine. Remember a few months ago, the Germans sent tanks to Ukraine. They made a big deal
88
of
tanks.
the
Yes.
levered. And in the press releases, they announced they were sending 14 of one tank and 88 of another. 14 and 88 are white supremacist numbers. They have to do with the 14 words and 88 HH Heil Hitler. Okay, so 14 and 88 are well-known white supremacist terms. And again, Russia's been saying they're Nazis, and they are Nazis. So I'm saying when they're sending German tanks into Russia, again, think about that from a history perspective. They're sending German tanks into Russia, so they're reminding of World War II. I mean, that happened in this war. And
Yeah.
what I'm saying is 14 and 88 are weird numbers. Like, why not 90? Yeah,
Well,
we're gonna send-
exactly. 85, 90. How do they arrive at 88? It's not a mistake or a coincidence.
Right. And so I'm saying they've done that. And I would say the 322 date is not an accident. I believe that. I really do. And I just think they see the symbolism of it. And, what they did there by getting McCain and Obama, the skull and bones technique is basically you get both sides, right? So the best way to win a bet, right, between who's going to win, Democrats or Republicans, is to back both of them, right?
Right. Can't lose.
Right. So you're going to win either way. So they were doing that with McCain and Obama. Get the Democrat, get the Republican. It's a tactic. And with Skull and Bones, and by the way, Skull and Bones includes people like Kerry, people like Bush. And by the way, who else is connected to Khodorkovsky? Bush and Kerry. You can find a picture of George Bush. If you look up Khodorkovsky, which is K-H-O, Dork, D-O-R-K, Core, Dork, O-V, Sky, S-K-Y. So type in Khodorkovsky, George W. Bush, and do an image search, and I'll bet you'll find one very quickly.
Yeah. Looks like we've got a few here.
Right.
Yeah, look, he's in a tuxedo with him at some fancy party.
Right. I told you it's not tricky. And
Signed
Kerry, of
picture,
course,
too, Lee. Look at that. From the president. Wow.
and by the way, and now let's, since we went full conspiracy there, let's look up, since you got Khodorkovsky type in Khodorkovsky Rothschild shares. Khodorkovsky Rothschild shares. And you'll find a couple of mainstream media articles.
Yep. Arrested oil tycoon passed shares to banker. Khodorkovsky's arrest, the Sunday Times voting shares passed to Mr. Rothschild.
So, factual or conspiratorial?
And this is factual.
Right. Mainstream media source right there, not Russian disinfo. But so now let's do one other thing. Let's tie Khodorkovsky into a few more things. Look up Khodorkovsky prison, Israel. That should bring up stories. We're trying to establish here that Khodorkovsky, when he got out of prison, when he was pardoned by Putin.
Oh, he pardoned him, yeah.
Right. When he was pardoned, where is the first place he went?
But why did Putin pardon him? He went to Russia. He went to Russia or Israel? It says Putin pardons Jewish tycoon Mikhail Khodorkovsky Oops, I have an ad blocker.
I think
So he-
I would like to ask. Obviously, I can't answer for Putin.
Right.
I would love to ask him that question. I would love to say to him, "Do you regret?" And I'll put it like this: I don't think Putin could really fully grasp the way Khodorkovsky would be completely used. Khodorkovsky was a main backer of Navalny. Khodorkovsky is all involved in Ukraine.
Uh-huh.
I don't think when Putin let Khodorkovsky out, I guess he thought he would be mellow. And Putin's shown time and time again that he's actually a pretty merciful. He's not really at all the monster they make him out to be. If anything, he's too lenient, I think.
I agree. In this, he's saying here, he's got a quote that he's saying exactly as you described. He signed a decree on Friday to pardon the jailed Jewish tycoon, and he said he has spent more than 10 years behind bars. It's a tough punishment, Putin said on Thursday. He's citing humanitarian aspects. His mother is ill. A decree to pardon him will be signed shortly. This is a reasonable guy with mercy.
He's reasonable. And the way Khodorkovsky got in jail is this is well documented. After Putin was put into power by the oligarchs in the 90s, basically, they thought he was a pushover, okay? So they give Putin the leadership, and then he starts going, I'm not going to do what the oligarchs are doing because they're stealing Russia's assets. He was a patriot, a Russian patriot. So he started being a good president, and that's when they hated him. That's when the U.S. started. Because remember, George Bush, at first, people liked Putin. Remember that? But when it was clear that he was not going to be a U.S. British bitch anymore, and he was never one, but the other presidents like Yeltsin were, okay? And Khodorkovsky specifically, what he was trying to do was he was working with the Brits, like Rothschild, trying to, Yukos Oil is the biggest oil company in Russia. Now, in the Soviet Union, that was owned by the state, right? Everybody. But after the Soviet Union fell, now who owns the oil company? Right?
They gave it to the people. You told us about how they gave stock certificates.
They gave stock certificates, which a lot of people were able to buy cheap because people needed food more than stock certificates, right? So speculators came in, bought this, and Khodorkovsky was able to buy Yukos oil for pennies on the dollar. And he was in the process of selling it to the Brits and the U.S. government, I mean, the U.S. oil companies. And this is written about in a New York Times story. His plan was literally to sell Yukos to the UK and the US. Now you're starting to see why they're mad at him, why they're mad at Putin.
Yeah, because he screwed up this deal where they were going to get all the oil.
Yeah, and it's not just a minor deal. I mean, it's Russia's got the best energy resources of any country on earth. It's a huge amount, and when you combine oil and liquid natural gas,
right,
and all the resources they have, it's amazing. So this would have been a huge deal. And again, it's all documented in the New York Times.
Yeah. And Lee, isn't it also true that Russia recently completed one and is almost done with another of these like $20 billion liquid natural gas processing things like somewhere in Siberia or someplace crazy?
I think I heard a little bit about that, but unlike Hunter Biden, I'll say I'm not an energy expert. I'll take the $1 million, sure. But I don't know. I don't know a tremendous amount, but I know more than I should. But I'm not an energy guy. I couldn't name like 8 companies, but I understand the basics geopolitically of how that works.
Right.
So Khodorkovsky is a major figure, and because he still got, at one point he was the richest person in Russia, and he still got that billions of dollars. So he's got that huge asset, money. And, when the governments are doing stuff off books, like with the CIA or MI6, they like cash, right? They don't want it traceable on a budget.
They're like Fannie Willis.
Right. Yeah. So
It's a black
Khodorkovsky
thing.
is a key player here, and I don't think the 322 date is accidental, because one thing, you know, I've seen the debates come down to kind of at this point, well, who did it? Is it ISIS or is it Ukraine? That's the kind of debate. You saying that too, Jason?
Well, they also were saying that Russia did it to itself. Some Ukrainian minister said that. It's the stupidest thing I ever heard. There's one other piece, though, Lee. Because
it's not serious. I mean,
Right.
I'm not saying you're saying it, but I'll put it like this: if he said, "Well, Elvis did it,"
Right.
makes
It would
much
be
sense.
equally, yeah.
It
Let me
really
just
would.
point out one thing, though, before we go on, because you're right, I think, about the 322, and there's more coded messaging here. The New York Times, Fox News, NPR, Reuters, AP earlier are all reporting, here's NPR, death toll rises to 133. And 33 is a number that they often use in these coded messages as well. Somebody was suggesting that we were talking about gematria. Not at all. Not talking about that. This is just steganographic messaging where some sort of code is presented in clear view, but it only means something to people who understand the code.
Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah, because a lot of stuff is dealing with secret societies. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Here, we have it right here, steganography. It's the technique of hiding data within an ordinary non-secret message to avoid detection.
and I guess this would be a good time to bring it up. I mentioned this on X earlier. So, my book about Andrew Breitbart, one thing I want to talk about, I decided to do this because I'm trying to do what I'd say is, aside from Righteous Indignation, Andrew's autobiography, the definitive book on Breitbart. I mean, because I know stuff firsthand. You know, I've talked to you about it. The way I got the idea for the book, actually, was I've talked to my girlfriend, Sarah. So I was telling Sarah, you know, we're talking a lot. And I was telling her my stories, you know, stuff I've been through in my life. And so telling her all the stuff about Andrew, for instance, I was like, I have really good stories. I mean, I have really good stories.
Yeah.
I was standing with Andrew when he got served this lawsuit by Shirley Sherrod. I
Wow.
was standing right there with him. And it was with my son, Jack, who was like 10 or something.
Mm.
And so we're standing there talking to Andrew at CPAC. And suddenly a process server comes up and hands Andrew the lawsuit. And so no one knew it. He'd just been served with the lawsuit. And I looked at my son, Jack, and I said, now, Jack, you remember, we're going to go home tonight and turn on the news, and you'll see they're going to talk about Andrew Breitbart's been served with a lawsuit. You watch, Jack. And sure enough, you know, we went back to the hotel, and it was on lead story in the news.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's homeschool, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because I very specific, look, you know, there were rumors that he might be sued. So him getting served, I was like, I've just witnessed what's going to be the top story on like Slate and BuzzFeed and everything else.
Mm.
So it turned out to be. But I'm going to talk about Zionism in Andrew Breitbart. And because I realized, you know, periodically some people say stuff to me. Like they'll say, well, they'll show a picture of Andrew and Jim Hoft from Gateway Pundit with Netanyahu. Now, so someone on X asked me today, is it true that Andrew was best friends with Netanyahu? I never heard Andrew in 18 months once mention Netanyahu or like he talked to Netanyahu.
Yeah, that's
right. If he would talk to like Newt Gingrich or Ann Coulter, again, Andrew and I basically talked every day.
right.
So he was like, what's new? He's like, well, I talked to Ann Coulter last night and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
He would mention it. If he talked to Netanyahu, I guarantee you he would mention
Right.
it. No, I'm not
But
saying.
also, it looks like he's interviewing him or something. I mean, I interviewed Dershowitz, but I'm not friends with him.
So I'm not going to say what he was doing because I never talked to him about it. But what I'm going to also talk about in the book, and this is slightly, I guess, controversial. No one talks about it. Is the way Zionist neocons fund the right. Everybody in the right is funded by massive amounts of money going through groups like AIPAC or various Israel groups. And it's a huge amount of money. And actually, when I moved out to DC in 2017, I had dinner at someone's house. There's a well-known publisher, a conservative publisher, and he was also a Middle East expert. And I'd been looking at the Middle East stuff for a while, so I was glad to talk to this guy. I said to him, everybody talks about the Muslim Brotherhood, but when I've looked into it, I think it's a Muslim World League. And he said, you're exactly right. And no one ever opposed that. I said, what? I said, well, go back. You're saying I'm right. He said, yeah, the Muslim World League, they are the problem. They're Wahhabism. It all comes from them. But the pro-Israel funding does not want to hear anything negative about Saudi Arabia at all. He said, you'll never get it published. And I said, my God, that's why I can't get it published, because I've been trying to get these stories published. And every time Breitbart News, this is after Andrew died, would turn those stories down and block those stories.
Wow.
Not only punish any of them. When I started thinking about it, I was like, oh, yeah, that's the problem I was facing. No one will do that. And at first, it sounded weird to me. I said, Saudis are allied with Israel. And at the time, a lot of people know it now, but the time was really blowing my mind.
Right.
So I looked into it. I was like, yeah, that's true. The Saudis and Israel are kind of working in the back channel, and I think it's changing now, by the way. I think there's a split between Israel and Saudi Arabia. And I think BRICS is part of that. But I don't want to get into weeds on that. But that, for me, looking at the Zionists, for instance, I've talked about and a lot of Breitbart decisions are based on Zionism, I think. I'll give you, for instance, their decision to compare Mike Cernovich to Andrew Breitbart.
Oh, yeah, okay. We spoke about that the other day. That's crazy.
Right. And, but one thing about Cernovich, he's clearly, Cernovich is a guy who said, if anyone says Epstein is connected to Mossad, it's anti-Semitic. Did you see that?
I have seen him say a lot of stupid stuff, and I wanted to ask you, we're going to break in just a few minutes, and I'm going to try to call John Mark Dougan again, and we'll resume on the sponsor-exclusive segment. People are going to be able to watch on patreon.com/Stranahan and on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and subscribestar.com and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. I want to continue this conversation on there, Lee, because I was watching Candace Owens interview this guy, Rabbi Barclay, who I have not seen before, who I think treated her absolutely awfully and was a terrible spokesperson for Jewish people. He just berated Candace Owens, demeaned her for things that she never even said, basically demanded of her that she insist that October 6th was the worst thing that ever happened. And I'm not minimizing what happened there at all, but I guarantee if you were a 10-year-old kid inside the Moscow Crocus City Hall getting shot, that was equally bad as any horrible atrocity that has ever occurred. So it was a bizarre interaction with this Rabbi Barclay and Candace Owen that drove me totally away from the message this rabbi was giving. But something important was raised in there that was an important distinction that I believe you agree with, but is so frequently not spoken about. Because I think a lot of times when people hear you say Zionism, they think you're talking about Jewish people. And there was a distinction made, I think it was during this broadcast with Candace, between Christian Zionists and Jewish Zionists, and they're completely separate from Jewish people who may not align themselves with Zionism, like Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro and myself. So we'll talk about that. when we get to the other side on the sponsor exclusive segment, I'm just going to ring John Mark Dougan and see if we can get him to join us. But stay with us, everybody. We'll be right back. Join us either on Lee's platform or any of the Crowdsource, the Truth sponsorship platforms. And thanks very much to everybody who's sponsoring the show. We're going to also talk about this shooting in Moscow and get Lee's insights into what we might expect to see next.